Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Teacher's Table Live. And this is a special talkback session as part of the Hive Summit. And we have with us one of our presenters, and that is Adam Moreno, a close friend of mine. I'm really excited to do this session and sort of talk about purpose-driven learning. So thank you, Adam, for agreeing to sort of come back to the Teacher's Table.
I'm super excited to be here. I am ready for this talkback session, for this happy hour talkback session. I don't know if everybody saw my tweet, but Amanda Gray challenged me to create a Hive Summit inspired mixed drink because my Busy Bee recipes were all cocktails. So I made one with honey and bourbon, and I call it the Tipsy Bee. And it is delicious, but I put a video out on how to make it. And so I'm here for a happy hour talk back. Is that allowed?
That's totally allowed. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for coming and being here, like I said, and putting out the Tipsy Bee recipe. I think that was really awesome. Also really liked so I asked all the speakers to provide sort of a recipe. I think it's kind of fun. Like I said, we're kind of gathered around the table learning about all sorts of things. Why not fill our mind, but why not also fill our bellies? So I thought it'd be cute. Ask all the presenters, and I'll put them together. And so I asked Adam, and, well, I'll let Adam take over the story from this point forward.
There's not much of a story, but I can make even the smallest story into a slightly longer story, I suppose. But the reality is, as a single guy, no partner, no children, I don't cook very often. As a teacher, I got invited to a number of families' homes for dinner. As a youth pastor, I got invited to a lot of congregation members' homes for dinner. My mom likes to make me things that I stick in my fridge. That's cool. But I mean, I'm almost 40 years old, and I still eat some of my mom's home-cooked meals. It's really good, but I don't cook. Not that I can't. I don't. And so you asked for a recipe. I don't have a home cooked recipe that I want to take off of the box of I don't know, some Stouffer dinner meal or something like that. But I have mastered some really nice cocktails. I tend to be the person at parties who mixes drinks while other people cook. You know that, Michael. So I shared with you a couple of drink recipes because that is the type of chef I am.
Well, you guys got to check it out. I will say specifically of his Tipsy Bee recipes, while I enjoy all of them, I got to tell you the Irish cream is real good. Is real good. So definitely check that out, people. Super awesome. Let's see who's here from our Teacher Table community for one of our Teacher Table members, Adam Moreno. Super excited. We got Kathy Sue, good evening, gentlemen. I like that. Thank you, Kathy Sue. Amanda Gray made it, and I heard you, Amanda, are joining Adam in this Tipsy Bee cocktail.
She totally is. She posted it on Twitter. I actually just responded to her because she's got a wine glass. I used fancy. I said a snifter or a rocks glass, but she went with the big red wine glass. Perfect.
I love it. We have Caitlin here. She's saying hello to both of us. She also says that was a great tweet. Jennifer Knox made it back. Carol made it back. So awesome to have you. Caitlin says she wants Tipsy Bee. Jennifer Knox says I don't drink, but this looks good.
You know what, Jennifer? I'm gonna pause you there, Jennifer. I use some really good Seedlip. It's non-alcoholic drink mixers. They're fantastic. I will put out a non-alcoholic mixed drink that's going to be really good because I have some friends who don't drink. And then it's actually kind of fun with some people who aren't 21 yet that you can have something like a fancy, drink, but it's completely non-alcoholic. But it's kind of a fun thing to do too. So I'll share one because, they're pretty tasty even without any alcohol in them.
Amanda says it's super tasty. And Natalia's here from Mexico City. Thank you for making it to so many of these events, all of you, really.
Yeah.
These are some of the regulars, and I'm loving it. Carrie's here. Only a few traffic laws were broken to get me back to my computer in time to get here. I love it. I won't tell anybody. Kathy Sue giving us a little bit of a recipe. Cherry Coke and cinnamon whiskey. Tasting really good right now.
No, I really like the fact that some of you embrace the happy hour talk back. I really that's why I needed it to be at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time for me, and not 8 a.m. morning time like the regular teacher's table is.
Awesome. Gary says those recipes were just what this school year requires.
I think that's going to prove to be very true. Very true.
Carla's here. I have honey from my son's friend. That's as close as I can get. That'll be just fine. Yvonne's here. Nice to have you here. All right, so again, just welcome everybody and thank you for being at the teacher's table. For those of us that are catching this after the fact, I hope you've made it this far in the video. I should have said this earlier, but you can join in the conversation down below in the comment box. So share some thoughts you have for Adam or the session or things you learned or took away from the session. We'd love to sort of hear from you guys that way as well. And let's dive in. If the etiquette we have here in the live chat is if you guys have a question for Adam, just put at Mr. Matera, and I will make sure Adam sort of sees it and gets to it. So you guys can ask him sort of any of these questions that like really apply to that purpose-driven learning. There's so many great things. I can speak to it as well because I've done it, but I really want to hear from the master himself. He's right here. He's right next to me.
Oh, wow. And let me open it just up too with, purpose-driven learning specifically. I mean, that is the pedagogy that I created and I've used in my classroom, in my camp setting, in my congregational youth group setting. I mean, just across the board, in and out of the classroom. But it really is rooted in social emotional learning. And over the years, instead of these words just being words that I randomly chose one day, like I've really refined them, rooted in social emotional learning. So if people have questions about social emotional learning in their classroom or even in their families beyond the classroom, I'm open to discussing beyond just specifically purpose-driven learning to social emotional learning, and especially the focus that we always should have. But this year, as we begin this school year, maybe there's a more intentional focus on that.
Sure. We already got our first question in. I love it. So thank you guys for participating. Caitlin asks, with the rubric, how do you track a student's progress? I have the resources which are amazing, but I am a little overwhelmed with how to track it. I know they need to self-assess, and then she ends with help.
Help. So it was Caitlin. Is that who had the question? Caitlin, right? Caitlin, and it is about trusting the self-assessment process. And I know that how do you track? It is recorded by how the students feel, how the students articulate, how then you offer the feedback for it. And so for me, first quarter was student assessment, and then second quarter was my feedback to how they've grown from first quarter. Third quarter was their reflection again, and then the end of the year was my reflection. So two real more summative reflections, self-assessments by the students, two feedback based off of what they were saying. So those ways to sort of track. But the reality is, like, if they say, I feel like I've grown more confident because of A, B, and C, if they can articulate it, then the reality is, like, who am I to be like, no, you're not more confident because I didn't see it in this instance or something, like, and I know you wouldn't do that. I'm being a little dramatic, but it's so important for them to believe that they have these skills and they can develop these skills. They can articulate what their limitations are. They definitely can embrace and affirm what their strengths are. And so, yeah, I mean, trust the self-assessment. That is how you track it throughout. And you can do it more than just at the end of the quarter. It's like check-ins to say, hey, you set this goal. Where are we in the path of meeting this? Per lesson, per unit, per quarter. I mean, so let them offer you the ability to track by offering their own assessment periodically throughout the quarter or semester.
She has a little follow-up question to that is, do you keep notes and such for these conferences that you're talking about?
Yes and no. So I used to really be, I mean, sort of CYA. Is that are those the letters you use, Mr. Matera?
I don't really like CYA at all.
No, but I think we feel this need when we go outside of the traditional systems of school, especially. So here I'm getting rid of grades, or definitely taking the focus off of grades, and CY, cover your butt, we'll call it, CYB. So you take all these notes and you track and you track and you track so that you can prove what it is that you are doing has value, has worth, and I can, defend it to my administration, defend it to parents when they come in. The reality is, after my first 3 years of doing it or so, I started to write less notes, track it less on my own end, because parents would come in with their students, and the students would be able to articulate how they grew or where they're struggling, and I simply needed to offer feedback. I knew my students, and I trusted that what I knew about them and the conversations we've had and the experiences we've had in class would allow me to articulate who they were and how they've grown. And more importantly, they can articulate who they are and how they've grown, and I can either affirm it or even offer a little challenge, like, hey, you're saying that you've really grown in, and you pick a purpose-driven learning word, in confidence, or you've really grown in focus, but I see a little bit of struggle still here and here. And so I had a little bit of the benefit of not having to turn in any papers to prove anything. And again, once the kids started to articulate it, it was impressive to the parents. It's impressive to the administration, which is secondary to the fact that it is important and impactful and meaningful for the child. I hope that helps.
No, I think that really helps. And I want to say too, from my experience, I think there are different ways you can kind of use this. And for me, the cornerstone of it all is that this is the language you use, that this is the conversations you have, and this is the conversations you continue to sort of, I don't want to say make, but encourage kids to use that vocabulary. And eventually it becomes natural for you as well as them. And I'm not sitting here tracking someone's confidence with little tick marks or little scores. The reality for me is it's that language I get to use. It's the fact that I can do a survey and say what are your goals, right? And then Adam just said, now I can use those to fine tune what I'm doing with students as well as to hold them accountable, right?
Yeah.
So it's not so much as how do we grade or assess or track these things for me. For me, this is just the language, right? This is the language of what could be dynamic people. I
want to point out. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the sort of story about how Adam sort of came up with this and what he looked at, and some conversations I remember you and I were having early on about it. It was this idea. I know for me, the world history side of things, we teach these amazing leaders, these amazing situations, these people in history, and we start to tease out some of the elements that they all have. And not that they needed to have all 10, but you definitely see these words sort of come up time and time again in these historical figures. And so I actually tee that up with my students. I mean, that is literally how I sort of sell them purpose-driven learning, that we've looked through, we've analyzed history, and this is what makes people of note. This is what makes people leaders. This
Yeah.
is what makes people leave a
Game
legacy.
changers, world changers. We sometimes use that phrase, successful people, and I used to use that a lot. But unless you can clarify what it means to be successful, it's not just money and it's not
Oh,
just
no, no.
fame, right? But what these are, when we're talking about the whole child, it's going to help them develop as whole people, and it's that holistic awareness that really helps us to be happy and healthy, to be in healthy relationships, to engage conflict in healthy ways. And so that to me is now what I mean when I say successful, right?
Yes, no, I make sure I tell the kids that, like, especially in that early speech, because I said this year in world history, we're going to learn about all sorts of leaders. And then even in my history class, I kind of point out we're going to learn about leaders in the arts, leaders in, so you go through it all. But then I say the same thing here with these words. And then with your rubric, you definitely have pointed out a myriad of people that cross the spectrum of roles they played in history. So that's pretty awesome. I will say, Caitlin here has a question about. We have a couple other questions, but this is.
I love it. Caitlin's a drama teacher like me. I'm glad she's embracing it.
She says, "What ages have you practiced this with?" She might be doing it with PK, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade, and 6th grade. I definitely seen it working with the 5th and 6th. Unsure about the younger ones. I have something to say on that, but I'll let you go first. This is your.
Well, so I have really used it in all ages. So in school, I was a 5th through 8th grade teacher, but then I had I had children's theater that worked with 1st, 2nd graders and 3rd and 4th graders, and I certainly used and focused our learning and our growing within these productions that we would do with them at camp. We go as young as 7 at camp, and so I've been a counselor of the 7-year-olds, and we use this language very intentionally at camp. And then in youth group, it is language that me and my Sunday school teachers have used, and all the way down to our 4 or 5-year-old Sunday school. How much they use it in response. I mean, I haven't seen a 4 or 5-year-old be like, I was having trouble taking a nap, but I showed resilience in, or I took their initiative to, count sheep. No, they're not using that kind of language and articulating it. But once they get up into 1st, 2nd, and grade, they really can model some of this language. There may not be full understanding, but what they can articulate, they can then start to internalize. And that just comes with age, this common language that becomes internal the more they mature.
So the story I wanted to tell actually isn't about purpose-driven learning, but it is about that age group a little bit. When my daughter was, I want to say 4, I decided I wanted to teach her a word, like a big word. We read the book Big Words for little kids. Great book, by the way. But nonetheless, I thought it was a neat idea that kids can learn big words, right? They're just words, and you can teach them any kind of words. So I decided a useful word. She is a single child, right? An only child. So I chose the word acquiesce. And I taught my 4-year-old what acquiesce means, and I used it. I mean, everything we're saying about purpose-driven learning, used it a lot, modeled it a lot, pointed it out when she did it, pointed it out when I did it, right? And then she knew acquiesce as a 4-year-old, and she would appropriately use the word acquiesce. And but the point I bring this up is not only did she understand the definition, she actually understood it in practice, because there were moments you could see catch herself in terms of the things she wants to do, and she stopped and she said, Dad, I'm going to acquiesce. And it was so there was an actual action that went with that definition, and she got it, and she was able to execute not only the word, but the action.
Well, and I love that. And I love it. I can completely see your daughter doing that. My nephew did, but I think it's common with a lot of these younger kids as they start to use words, whether they use them as your daughter did appropriately, or they say it and it's not. And you're all like, oh, that wasn't the right word, but they've heard adults say these words. And then that becomes a teachable moment when they say, my resilience, and they use it incorrectly. You can say, ooh, I like the fact that you're using the word resilience, but remember what it means? And that's where.
But you're going to have to be a little resilient here because you're using it wrong.
Because you're using it wrong. No, just kidding. No, I love it. So I do believe it can work with all ages. I do believe that the students can internalize it and use the language back at you, maybe as they get a little bit older.
All right.
Yeah.
So we have some other questions from other people.
Can I? I read something while you were talking. I just want to. Carrie points out that this would be good to do a character study in novels or books for maybe ELA teachers. And Carrie, want to tell you, yes. So we did that with plays and musicals within my drama class. And so it wasn't just about them being self-aware. It was about them recognizing it in others. One, that recognition is part of what empathy is. Can you recognize these qualities in other people? But it made great character studies in drama. I'm sure it'd make a great character study as you study throughout history, Michael, or if you're studying in ELA, the books that you are reading, for sure.
No, we already do that in history. I have them do that sometimes for like an essay on a test, have them apply the words. I also, to be honest, in the school I teach at, we have been sort of piloting standard-based grading, and we don't have a formalized system to let kids reassess. So some teachers just let them have it right away. Some kids have a little bit of a speed bump to that reassessment. I personally like the speed bump. I want them to sort of reflect. I think there's a power in reflection. So if you're going to reassess, you have to fill out this sort of reassessment form that really asks you to reflect how, what it will put you in this situation. What steps are you going to take to not be in that situation? Part of the form also asks them, how do they want to be reassessed? So they don't necessarily have to take the same thing if they don't want. If they have a different way that's better for them, I'm cool with that. But one of the pieces, I ask them to apply 2 purpose-driven learning words to their response, And this is really helpful in the beginning of the year when they don't know it yet. It's a great space for them to sort of apply these and use them. Towards the end of the year, kids literally come to me and like, I could write about all of these, like in this response, and it's like, yeah, you totally could, because in some way, shape, or form, probably some piece of those is what led to this moment where you didn't achieve that assessment.
I mean, it's so true, Michael, right? I mean, and this is where people say well, how do you grade? You don't grade these qualities, and yet demonstrations of these qualities, intentional development of these qualities, help support the work that would then go into a grade, right? So I'm not grading their confidence or their initiative or their effort, but a student who is confident in what they know and what they don't know, a child who takes the initiative to ask questions when they don't know, that are dependable group members, that show empathy in class, that are curious, that have creativity, that put forth their best effort each and every day with an enthusiastic attitude, that student is, quote unquote, an A student. I mean, like that student will have the grade they want at the end of the semester, quarter, not because you're grading those skills, because they've demonstrated a development in those skills. And if it's not where they want to be, then we talk about resilience and how they can overcome that obstacle, because a grade is just a temporary marking at where they're at, not who they are or where they have to stay.
Yeah, I very nicely said there at the end. Like it's just a grade. It's not who they are, right?
Right.
And I think what I love about the language is it makes the conversation so much more meaningful, right? When little 11-year-olds come to me and talk about their grade, it's such a stilted conversation, because what can I don't know, throughout the quarter you messed up in these 10 spots, what are you gonna do? Do better. That doesn't
It doesn't inspire.
Doesn't inspire, but it also doesn't really like give them something meaningful to go on. But like that's kind of how grading works. Like really, it was like, well, in these 10 assessments, you fell short in these little areas. I guess work on those moving forward. But you know, what are you gonna do? But in comes purpose-driven learning, and the moment they ask about like, well, like, how do I get an A, Mr. Matera? Or I'm at a B plus. Is there a way I can get a little more? Or I got a 3 on that last assessment. I wanted a 4, like, and they start to pout or whatever. I can say like, well, let's look at that purpose-driven learning language. What are areas that you felt you didn't bring your all on? And when there's 10 words, and I spend the entire year talking about how like we don't have to be all of those things at all the time. You've given them permission to say, well, on this area, I didn't bring my all on that. And like, that's all right. That's okay. But if you really are striving for like that perfection and we're looking for that area, these micro efficiencies, you're at a B plus or whatever the word is or the language the kid's coming to you with. Now it can be about like, well, let's try to tighten that one word up. Let's try to be a little more curious in class. What are ways we could be curious? You know, and then like generate ideas for them. And then all of a sudden there's like a plan of action for them. They leave more confident.
I agree, right? What I see happening in classes when I go around and work with teachers in schools, right? When we talk about content knowledge and grades, right? You get tested, and if you didn't know that knowledge, you're on to the next unit. So like, okay, you didn't understand Rome, but now we're past Rome, and it's like, well, what meaningful feedback can you give more than you didn't understand Rome? And now we're not going to revisit it again. And you can give them a second chance, I suppose, to understand it as part of standards-based grading, right? Redo and redo and redo. But like none of that actually matters. The way you can talk to them, because you know what they're going to need in the Rome unit and in the Greece unit and in the China unit. Is that right? You do.
I do all those things.
You do all those things. I know world history. But like in every unit, they're going to need to be aware of and develop and demonstrate purpose-driven learning skills, social emotional learning. And so it's an ongoing conversation throughout the school year, not a single content conversation that often by the time they get a grade is passed.
Good, super good point. I want to also move to another one of these questions by Carrie. So you brought that up about the character analysis, and it kind of led to some other things. But Carrie also said a long time ago when we were talking about assessing it, or the self-assessment aspect, she says, could the self-assessment be as simple as a slide scale, or would you recommend more of an open-ended response self-assessment?
Both and. Right?
Adam's favorite answer, just so you all know.
It is. It's not an either or, both and. Certainly the quick, where are you on a scale? When you put that into that circle so that the scale becomes, it looks almost like a star, they can see where they're going out really far and accomplishing a lot, where they're more limited. That's kind of a dynamic way to look at it. But those are very quick, formative assessments. This is where you are, and then you can set some goals to where you want to be. Done. But I would say if you're talking the end of quarters, if you're talking about the end of semesters, if you're talking summative, then written out answers that they've been given time to reflect on, then articulate, and then you have a conversation about. Now, the more students you have, maybe the less time those conversations can be, but you give them the chance to think about it, write it, and speak it, because everyone articulates their learning in a different manner, and you want everyone to be able to confidently express their learning.
Nice. I will say for me, like the way as I've done it is both. So I agree with Adam. So sometimes I do one of those like spider web sort of scores where they kind of see where they're at. And that's kind of nice to do like over time, right? Like if you have them and then keep that data for them, and then you can kind of see like, hey, look, your confidence went further out on the web, right? And this is where you were, this is where you're at now. But I really like short response, again, using a a Google form can be a really powerful tool to collect that data, use it with students, and then I think it was Caitlin asked about, how do you keep track of this stuff? I think keeping track of their self-assessments is the most important piece, right? Because then you can refer back in conversations, or if you're at a team meeting, like I don't know about you guys, we have these team meetings, and we usually discuss students of concern, and like, boom, I can pull that up and really already have a conversational plan of attack with that student that's relational and meaningful to them. I already have an in, because I can instantly start the conversation with like, hey, Derek, like you really were hoping to do X, Y, Z. Like, I'm not seeing you really do that, but like, what can I do to help you achieve what you are trying to strive for?
That's so good, Michael. That's so good. And just to speak about that tracking, I had the benefit of teaching 5th through 8th graders required. So I saw all of the students, and they kept journals, and that's where their assessments were kept. I actually never used a Google form, so I think just trusted that they would have it. But they did have it, and I made sure they would keep their record of their things. But I'll tell you what truly was amazing was to look back at their 5th grade, and something my 8th graders would do would be to look back at their first self-assessment in 5th grade. And I write about this in my book. I know I saw Jennifer say, right, finish your book, no pressure. It's coming. But in a story that I tell, I've had 2 students who in 8th grade, you wouldn't have, completely different than 5th grade. One was shy, and by the time she was in 8th grade, she was the lead in the musical in Guys and Dolls. And then the boy, he wasn't necessarily shy, but he thought, he was very academically good, but it was like, drama is just silly games. I don't really understand. So he was a little bit indifferent, obstinate, a little bit, this isn't going to help me be successful. Grew, and by 8th grade, he was Daddy Warbucks in Annie. And it's not to say that they got starring roles, so they must be really good. They were confident in their performance and able to articulate who they were and how they learned. And when you look back in 5th grade, they were all, what they could articulate was much less. It was such vast growth over those 4 years.
You have a unique perspective, being able to see students grow over time like that. That is pretty unique.
I love it, but I also know that's not how all teachers are. But you see them from the beginning when you say they come in still as 5th graders, don't you? And then they're leaving as almost 7th graders. They grow.
They totally grow. I tell parents about my use of gamification and purpose-driven learning all at the same time. Like, that is my 2 things I sort of share with parents that I'm using. And whenever there's a little nervousness about either one, it's so nice to sort of, like, once you guys do this, I gotta tell you, you're gonna be all in and you're gonna be a believer. And it's so nice to look at a parent and sort of say, it's like going to the gym, right? Maybe your kid's a little uncomfortable about this type of assessment, this type of discussion. Right. However, when you go back from the gym that first day, you're sore, you're tired, and you see 0 results except pain. I mean, you're like, I still weigh the same, but everything hurts. My day just got harder. Why am I doing this? But that if you dedicate yourself to that regimen, that you're going to see results. And I love to tell parents that we're flexing an educational muscle that's new for them. We're flexing some of their creativity. We're flexing really choice. We're asking them to become who they want to become, who they want to explore this year. And I guarantee you they leave a stronger, more confident version of themselves. And I've had students come back, 7th, 8th grade, say, of all their classes, mine prepared them the most. And that's crazy to me to think, right? Compared to, an English class that's going to help them write in every single class, that's got to help you the most, right? But I think it's the combination of purpose-driven learning and gamification, giving them the opportunity to endlessly express themselves, endlessly try different risk, options. I call it a risk-rich environment, right? They have that coupled with this wonderful language that comes from successful people in all walks of life, and having them, that language plus that like level of learning is amazing.
Well, and I'll tell you, beyond just the language, the skill development is taking a risk. Do you know what the risk it takes to be able to authentically develop your confidence or to truly show empathy for another person? I mean, while not this necessarily learning risks, they are social emotional risks that a lot of us as adults, we've closed ourselves off to almost. One of the things I talk to teachers about a lot is the fact that we need to develop our social emotional learning so that we can model for our students, but we model the things we are strong at and we model our limitations. And one of the cutest things my middle schoolers do, they know that focus is one of my limitations. It is a surprise to zero people. They know it right from the get-go. When the second day of class, we spend the entire class seeing how high we can jump up on tables rather than anything I have planned. But when I start to lose focus, go down a story path that like has nothing to do with what we're talking about, they really do. They're like, Mr. Marino, focus. Like, and they would tap their shoulder. This is what they did. This was our signal that like, you're on, like, hey, get back on track. So like they hold me accountable and I hold them accountable. And it really builds, when we talk about building authentic relationships, the fact that I'm willing to be vulnerable and share my weakness, my limitations, the things I'm working on, and help, and they are authentically allowed to hold me accountable to those, means that when I hold them accountable, right, it's just a give and take. We're in this together. Learning is a lifelong process, which means I am learning too.
Well, not to distract you even further, but we're gonna have a bit of a confetti party.
We are.
We made it, people. We made it. So thank you so much for reaching our goal. That's fabulous. I love it. I really appreciate you guys all being here. All right, so, push the wrong button there. I'm so glad that we got our confetti party with Adam. That means a lot to me. So thank you everyone for being here.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Adam, question. Why 10?
Well, I want you all to know that Michael is asking that question. Nobody asked that in the chat, right? I'm not quite looking at the chat. It's right below me.
No, it's somewhere in there, I swear.
No, you are asking. He's asking because for my first year, maybe 2 years, it was 9 words. And then Michael Matera comes around and we talk about what the words I'm using. We actually changed some of the words through conversation. I mean, to have a colleague and a friend like Michael who were working together to change the world one student at a time. I mean, so many great conversations, but we reassessed the words back in the day, and that 9 becomes 10. So it's 10 words, but Michael refused to call it 10. He referred to them as 9 plus 1. Oh, it's purpose-driven learning. The keys of purpose-driven learning, 9 plus 1. And I'm like, oh, like it's 10 words. It's 10 words. But yeah, real funny. You're a funny guy. But,
it was in the chat. Look it. I brought it up for you.
Oh, why 10? Thanks, Carrie. Oh, I see it.
Thanks, Carrie.
Don't encourage him. But it is, I mean, it's a funny story, right? And this is, I don't truly believe, I mean, I've used this now for almost a decade. Michael, you've used it for probably almost a decade, right?
Yep.
So I feel like these words for me are pretty firm. They're foundational. I've gone to like ed camps and I challenge people. I say, what words are you think you're missing? What social emotional learning, like what words did you add? And almost always if somebody gives me a word, I can put it under the umbrella of one of the other words. We can talk about why I chose resilience instead of perseverance. We can talk about, things like that. But back in the day, I mean, we actually had perseverance. We had adaptability. We had generosity, all good words, but arguments can be made on how they can fit under other ones, why they're not maybe as strong as the words we've sort of settled on. But early in it, there were only 9. And Michael Matera came up with a 10 and then refused to call it 10.
I also have to say, this is a good reminder that I know Adam would be happy to share with all of you, is be yourself and be that relational and silly with your colleagues. Because I think the students knew we were good friends, and so to just sort of refer to it as 9+1, knowing they just left his class, calling it like the 10 keys of purpose-driven learning, like it became a little funny shtick. There was like camps of like the 9+1 camp, and then there were the 10 camp. These are moments that it takes like a second to be that way with somebody else in front of your students, and it's so worth it to do that.
So he called it 9+1, which drove me crazy, but I taught the kids of how ancient aliens built the pyramids as nuclear reactors. And I'm not kidding. There were kids who truly believed that ancient aliens built the pyramids and would go to his class and like argue with him as if like, well, Mr. Marino says, Mr. Marino knows nothing about world history. Like,
nice. John says here, I think resilience should be stick-to-itiveness.
Stick-to-itiveness.
I like it.
I like how that is written out. I've never seen that written out that way. Stick-to-itiveness. I actually like saying that a lot more than resilience. Stick-to-itiveness.
That's awesome. Caitlin also loves the ancient aliens idea. So you got another convert there.
I'm not saying that you have to believe. I'm saying the show is really interesting. But when you're talking to middle schoolers, you have to clarify what you're joking about and what you're not. I did have a parent call me to ask me if I truly told the 6th graders that the world was going to end so they didn't have to do their homework according to the Mayan calendar in 2012. And then it didn't, and I got a phone call. But
Kathy Sue asks if you had her husband as a student. Yvonne posts just a picture of an alien. That's awesome. I'm gonna bring that up, Yvonne. Yvonne, that's awesome. All right, so back to the purpose-driven learning. I want to bring. Well, this is nice. I think it's good that we all get this, that we should be this relational. Here I'm sort of bringing up your purpose-driven learning rubric. This is what I give out to my students every year. I have them put it in their binder, and like I said, I sort of reference it a lot. We can use it, like you've already said, sort of a character analysis. I have them do it for leaders, that kind of thing. Put it in essays, put it in my reassessment forms, and then obviously be sort of daily, purposeful, everyday language with the kids, and really kind of insist they try to use it as well and nurture that, bring them into the fold for sure. So I would strongly recommend people grabbing this resource from Adam's page, where he's got that linked from his website too. So if you're catching this after the summit, definitely go to MrMarino.com.
Yeah, .com.
So
Michael, let me just point out on there. So something that I really like, I get a lot of comments on the leaders, and certainly there's way more leaders, and in your context, you might have leaders that connect to your subject area, might connect more with the context your school is in. So change up those leaders as you see fit. There's so many wonderful ones out there. I tried to have a nice diversity of those leaders, but the I can and I will, maybe back to what Caitlin was talking about being able to keep track. Oftentimes the students don't know how to build these skills. And so something like this rubric says, hey, this is a way to demonstrate to yourself, to demonstrate to me, to demonstrate to your classmates this skill. And so, I can, because sometimes they don't even believe that they can share their voice or stand up for somebody else or express a different opinion. I can and I will then takes that extra step, right? I have the ability to, and I will take the initiative to do these things. And so it's sort of I do not have a checklist. You did this, you did this, you did this. I think that might begin to limit it, but it certainly is something they can reference when they're like, what can I do to more fully demonstrate empathy, to more fully demonstrate my creativity? Well, let's talk about that. And, and that column is, to me, has been a very powerful column.
I fully agree. And like I said, this to me, some people are posting here that Carrie said she's adding it to her beginning of your packet. Yvonne says that's a great idea to start from day one. Couldn't agree more, guys. Like, get this. They don't know your class at all yet. So if you can make this part of your first week rollout, then this becomes like what it's like to be in your class. So I guess use one of the purpose-driven learning words yourself. Be a little confident with it, put it in play, and just sort of move with that confidence. Adam is definitely sharing with you that it works, and you have enough resources to launch it. And I'm pretty certain you're going to be really happy that you've done so.
And can I encourage in the early days? I mean, throughout the whole year, but especially in the early days, intentionally catch people demonstrating these skills and point them out publicly or privately, depending on your situation. But like when somebody is demonstrating confidence, when somebody takes the initiative, when somebody is particularly creative, when somebody asks just the best question to dig deeper into their curiosity, when they're putting forth their best effort, bring it up, because one reminds them, oh, that I am working on it. But then also, like, it shows the class, like, oh yeah, that's right, we're working on developing these skills. So
there's a bit of questions on when did you refill your drink there. They really want to know.
You guys are observant.
And
can I tell you something?
They're jealous.
If you watch the video, the drink recipe makes 2 drinks. 1, 2. So I just set them next to me because I didn't want to like get up, And so then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this one's done, I'll grab it. And it didn't even occur to me that anybody on the live stream would be like, how did that glass get refilled?
That's awesome. You dispelled the magic that we thought you had.
Right? It's theater elves came.
I love it. That's fantastic. You guys, I think Adam's giving you great advice. Get started, put it in play, try it. 2?
Devon asked how many I've had. I wasn't going to interrupt you. You were doing so well. I just was answering Devon.
Amanda says you sassed her about the wine glass.
Well, hers was a big. She like poured the double recipe into 1 glass. I split mine into 2, but it's the same amount. It's all the same. It's differentiated drinking.
I love it. All right, so
we'll get back on track here. Purpose-driven learning, yes. I really hope people find it powerful and impactful. I would love if people are using it to reach out to me, of course, if you have questions, but also with your stories, because it's those stories that then when I go and work with other teachers, I can share more than just my stories. I can share Michael's stories. I can share your stories at how they start to impact your classroom, your students' learning. I would really appreciate it.
I know that Adam is true to his words on that. So you guys truly reach out to him, and whether that's email, Twitter, Facebook. You guys are all part of the Teachers Table community, and so is Adam. So definitely connect with him there. It works. I'm happy to help too, but I mean, this is. We have Adam right here, so let's make sure we
and share it, right? I mean, share it with your colleagues, your administration, share it with your parents. These forms, Michael showed the rubric, but I have a sheet that sort of talks about each of the keys of purpose-driven learning. Send it home, because really, if the parents were using these words at home, gosh, I mean, it just strengthens the whole action more. And so I'm actually working on a blog post about purpose-driven parenting because I just think it connects with these parents who are now trying to be teachers at home as well, and in our classroom. So the more we can collaborate with everyone, have this shared language beyond just our classroom, yes, with our students, but with their families, with our colleagues, with the administration, it empowers it so much more.
I think you're so right. Some people are talking about wishing we could have like it go school wide or grade wide. I have to tell you, when Adam and I did it, as well as the 6th grade science teacher, those 6th graders really, I mean, you could feel that difference. Adam probably could speak to that more because he has all the years, but it seemed like those 6th graders really, that was probably one of the best years. And then this past year, my whole 6th grade team that I work with chose to do it in all the classes. And it was, again, another one of those like super powerful years where like they internalized it like no other.
Yeah. And for me, it's because people, I mean, I'm part of a social emotional learning group on Facebook called SEL INEDU. It's a great group for resources. But a lot of times people are putting out these like package programs for advising and there's something about that. But, Michael, sometimes if you force it in an advising and it's just something you do for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, once a week, or it's an assembly that they come to, they don't receive it the same way. In fact, maybe younger students might, but older students sometimes roll their eyes at it. Oh my gosh, are we talking about? But if you incorporate it daily, and it's just the language you use, and it's the skills that they know are going to help them, I guess it's not a program, right? It is a pedagogy, which is a process. And the more people who are involved in that process, the deeper it will go, the more impactful it can be. And I have found even the older students, especially, like, internalize it. It isn't something they roll their eyes at. It isn't something they reject the same way some of these package programs are. I guess not to speak ill of them, but.
No, I think I spoke to that on the teacher's table after your session, this idea of advising lessons. And this kind of goes with also what Brad and Nathan talked about a little bit too. Stopping your class and having a discussion right then and there, right? Or using purpose-driven learning, infusing that discussion immediately in the situation or with the students, or processing it when they're asking about it, their grade or whatever, is so much more powerful than Fridays are, our bullying lesson, and we're going to talk about bullying and why you should not bully and be more empathetic. Like, and here are 3 scenarios we're going to read where Sally and Timmy were out at the playground. Like, whew, that is a tough sell. That is a tough sell. At least for my 6th graders, more often than not, that kind of advising isn't an effective one.
Yeah. Michael, there's a question real quick from Carrie, and I know we're all going to have to get over to the XPLAT chat in just a couple of minutes, but she asks about badges. Now, I had gamified lessons and moments in my classroom. I used gamified mechanics, but I did not have an overall gamified classroom, especially the way Michael does. And so, Michael, are these things you would give badges to, or how do you incorporate purpose-driven learning and any sort of gamified mechanic?
So I've been gamifying and doing purpose-driven learning for quite some time. Yeah. And I have dabbled at different levels with both of those. Some years I've done absolutely nothing with it. Then I've tried where they were badges. Then the science teacher and I did a shared game, and we had this thing where each skill had bonuses you could unlock, and sort of the farther up you went on the skill tree, if you will, of a particular skill was pretty beneficial to you in the game. That was kind of neat. And one of the ones then that allowed us to have some items where other kids could award it, like if they saw kids doing these things, which was kind of neat to involve the students. But ultimately, I don't give them at all. All said and done, I have decided to separate them out because there's a seriousness to it that I like. There is the game is a game, and I love that. And I love that piece of it, right? The complete imaginativeness of the game. But maybe it's my world history teacher, but there's a seriousness to it too. Like, I want you to be the best version of you. And one of the best languages I can help communicate and get you to understand that is purpose-driven learning. And I don't want to mix that with badges and XP and power-ups. I just want it to be straight talk, like my heart to your heart, my head to your head.
I love that, Michael. In my classroom, we would talk over the 4 years about discovering the greatness, and that was the word we used, greatness that lies within us, and how do we then affirm that greatness and share that greatness with the world. And so, the keys of purpose-driven learning for me, like, helps us be aware of and then share that greatness. And the kids did take it very seriously. And when they would make their mistakes, as they're going to, when they have their limitations, when they don't demonstrate these skills in moments that they should, because but they're kids, right? And all of us do. We all, fail at this sometimes. There is that level of like, oh, how were you great today? Oh, I failed. Well, then let's make sure that tomorrow we're great. And we, make every day great became sort of our motto. And it was with intentionality. How is class better because you're here today? If class ends and you can't answer that question, like, we need to assess, like, how are you contributing? How are you being here, adding to this class, to this school, to your family, to your community? Like, at the end of the day, why is the world a better place because you are here? And that intentionality, they lived into it. They loved it. And they loved being able to articulate with great pride how they were great, how they are great, and how they're going to make tomorrow great.
Yeah, I see the similar thing in my class as well with the legacy language. So I guess best answer, I keep them separate. That's not to say, though, you can't use it to set a context for your class for that day. So there's plenty of times where I'm doing, for example, some cheesy world history simulation where they're trading little pieces of paper that say like wood and stone on it, right? Like super cheesy, nothing remotely close to as cool of a video game or whatever. And I say, I need you to be, I need you to bring your enthusiasm, because it is contagious. So like, if you come and you're like, this is gonna be awesome, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be the best trader in the Mesopotamia region, like, when you come and bring that kind of enthusiasm, it catches on. So sometimes set that context, or I'll say like, hey, I'm really looking for some purpose-driven learning characteristics today. I really need some of you to be strong leaders in this, and then like pick, like focus or, empathy or curiosity, right? And I think that's really good to do, to let them know, like, I don't know if any of you have had experiences where you like let your kids know that you're sick and you're like, but you're still there. They actually are really like, oh, like we're gonna do a solid here for Mr. Matera and like be extra special. Same thing, like let them know what you need. I need these skills today, and I think it really helps.
I do too. I use the phrase transformative, and it really, really was. My first 3 years, we can't get into it. We're going to be running out of time in just a little bit, but they were good years. They were fine, but I didn't see what I wanted for my students. I knew there was more, and it's in covering this social emotional learning and in defining it as purpose-driven learning so that I could really do it with intention, transformed how I taught and how my students learned. And it's amazing, so much so that I took it into other aspects of my life. I guess that's one of the biggest sort of like, it isn't something I just did in my classroom. My theater directing, my camp, my youth group. It really, how I deal with my nieces and my nephews. And it works everywhere. It truly is transformative. So I cannot wait to hear the stories from your classrooms this year, because I know it will have an impact.
Well, everyone, let's again thank Adam for being here. This is a great session, and I know that we'll continue to connect and collaborate over the years, and I hope all of you can join us connecting and collaborating. on the new Teachers Table Facebook page. So definitely check out the Facebook group. We're already up to like 180 some members and growing quickly. But thanks to all of you guys for posting things there. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Again, thank you, Adam. And I hope
You're welcome. Thank you, Michael. And thank you all. I love this Teachers Table community. I love the Hive Summit community. And we're about to go over to the XP Lab community. Michael, you've done such a wonderful job bringing together in an authentic and meaningful way. So thank you.
No problem. All right, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.